Hey guys, tonight we are going to push past the endless pottage and the hard, dark bread to explore a much more exciting side of the medieval menu. We're on a quest for the snacks, the sweets, and the questionable street foods that brought moments of joy and flavor to a world of hardship. You find yourself in the bustling, noisy, and profoundly fragrant atmosphere of a medieval market fair. The air is thick with the smells of wood smoke, roasted meat, unwashed bodies, and something utterly delightful, the scent of hot fat and sweet fried apples. But be warned, if you're the kind of person who worries about gluten, cross-contamination, and whether the cooking oil has been changed this decade, let's just say you might find the medieval snack scene challenging. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always a pleasure to see who's tuning in, so feel free to post your location and what time it is where you are. It creates a nice sense of our little global community, all settling in for the night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your senses are overwhelmed by the market, but your nose leads you to a small stall where a woman stands over a bubbling cauldron. The pot doesn't contain the familiar, lumpy brown stew of your daily life. It is filled with seething, shimmering pig fat, and the woman is deftly frying up what can only be described as the ancestor of the modern donut. This is the apple fritter, a treat beloved by everyone from peasants to princes, a golden brown nugget of pure, unadulterated pleasure. This is not an everyday food. This is a treat for a special occasion, a saint's day, a wedding, or a bustling market fair like this one. You watch, mesmerized, as the cook works. First, the apples. These are not the sweet, perfectly round, wax-polished orbs of a future supermarket. They are tart, gnarled, and oddly shaped apples, perhaps costards, or another old variety, prized not for their sweetness but for their firm flesh and sharp, acidic bite that will hold up beautifully to the heat and fat. She cores them and slices them into thick rings. Next is the batter. In a large wooden bowl, she mixes coarse wheat flour with a generous glug of ale. The ale is flat, the dregs from a nearby tavern, but it is perfect for this purpose. The batter is made with ale, because in your time, water is for washing and looking at suspiciously. Everything is better with a little bit of booze in it, including your donuts. The yeast in the ale will give the batter a slight lift, making it puff up when it hits the hot fat, and it lends a complex, slightly sour, bready flavor that cuts through the richness. She might crack an egg into the mix if she's feeling prosperous, adding to the richness and binding power of the batter. And if this stall caters to a wealthier clientele, you might see her add a pinch of something that looks like brown dust. This is a sign of incredible luxury. It is ground spice, perhaps cinnamon or nutmeg. These spices are part of the great mainstream historical engine of the medieval economy, the spice trade. They have traveled thousands of miles from the mysterious East, across deserts on the Silk Road and overseas in the holds of merchant ships, passing through a dozen hands, their price increasing exponentially at each step. A tiny amount of spice can be worth more than a peasant might earn in a year. Its presence here marks these fritters as a truly high-class treat. Now for the main event. Frying with a cauldron of hot pig fat is an extreme sport. The main safety equipment is being able to jump backwards really fast, It adds a certain thrilling element of danger to dessert. The woman takes a ring of tart apple, dips it into the thick, gloopy batter until it is completely coated, and then, with a practiced flick of her wrist, she drops it into the cauldron. The reaction is immediate and violent. The hot lard erupts in a furious sizzle, sputtering and spitting dangerous droplets of molten fat into the air. The water in the batter instantly turns to steam, causing the fritter to puff up and float on the surface, dancing and bobbing in the shimmering heat. The smell is intoxicating. The rich, savory aroma of the hot pork fat, the yeasty smell of the ale batter, and the sweet perfume of the cooking apple. This fiery process is not without its own folklore. Some cooks, in a quirky display of folk magic, might practice a form of pyromancy with the bubbling fat. As the fritters fry, a cook might watch the patterns of the bubbles or the shapes the sizzling fat makes as it spits from the pot, believing they can read the future in the roiling surface, a sign of a good harvest to come, or a harsh winter on the way. The woman uses a long-handled slotted spoon to turn the fritters, her arms and face exposed to the perilous heat. The risk of a third-degree burn is constant, a simple fact of her trade. After a minute or two, the fritters are a perfect, deep golden brown. She lifts them from the cauldron, glistening and beautiful, and places them on a wooden platter, perhaps lined with rushes, to drain. But the final touch, the anointing, is yet to come. She takes a dipper and scoops up a thick, amber stream of honey, drizzling it generously over the hot fritters. The honey melts into the crispy batter, its floral sweetness a perfect counterpoint to the tart apple and savory fat. If this were a truly extravagant stall, catering to nobles, she might instead reach for a small, precious cone of sugar. Sugar, like the spices, is a fantastically expensive import, so rare that it is often treated as a medicine or a spice itself, sold by the ounce. A dusting of gritty, unrefined sugar would elevate this treat to the realm of pure luxury. Finally, she hands you a fritter, perhaps served on a large leaf or a piece of rough paper. You pay your small coin and take your prize. It is almost too hot to hold. You blow on it and take the first bite. The experience is a symphony of contrasts. First, the crunch of the crispy, slightly greasy batter, then the soft, yielding texture of the hot, cooked apple inside. The sweetness of the honey hits your tongue, followed immediately by the sharp, acidic tang of the apple, all of it underscored by the rich, savory flavor of the pork fat it was fried in. It is sweet, sour, salty, and fatty, all at once. It is utterly, comprehensively delicious. As you savor the treat, you try not to think too hard about the hygiene of it all. The lard in that pot has likely been used for days, frying countless other items, accumulating a history of flavors and burnt scraps in its depths. The woman's hands are not surgically clean, but in your world, a strong stomach is a prerequisite for survival. The joy of this hot, sweet, fatty fritter is more than worth the risk. Food historians continue to debate the true accessibility of such treats for the common person. Were apple fritters a genuinely widespread food? A common pleasure enjoyed by all at village fairs and festivals? Or were they more of a lower gentry or wealthy town dweller's snack, with the combined cost of the apples, the flour, the honey, and the immense amount of precious cooking fat putting them far out of reach for the poorest rural peasants who lived on the edge of subsistence? The answer is likely that it varied greatly by region and by the prosperity of the season. For you, today, at this fair, it is an affordable moment of pure, decadent bliss, a golden, honey-drenched memory that will have to last you until the next great feast day. The sweet, fatty memory of the apple fritter lingers, a delightful ghost of the bustling fair. But feast days are rare, and the noisy excitement of the market is a fleeting thing. Now, we leave the crowds and the sputtering cauldrons behind and journey into the quiet, everyday reality of your world. You find yourself on a lonely hillside, the wind whipping at your tunic as you watch over a small flock of sheep. Or perhaps you are a traveler on a long, dusty road, miles from the nearest village. The gnawing ache of hunger begins in your belly, and you need sustenance. You need a snack that is portable, nourishing, requires no fire, and was made with the resources at hand. You reach into a small pouch at your belt, and you pull out a simple, yet profoundly satisfying treasure, a handful of fresh cheese curds. This is the other side of the medieval snack coin. If the apple fritter was a hot, decadent, and risky indulgence, the cheese curd is its calm, sensible, and reliable cousin. It is a food of profound simplicity and practicality, a way of transforming perishable milk into a stable, portable source of protein and fat. The creation of this snack is a small, everyday miracle that you might perform in your own home. It begins with the most basic of ingredients, a bucket of fresh, warm milk. It might be from your family's single cow, or the rich, fatty milk from your goats, or even the ewes you are watching on this very hillside. You bring the milk into your hut and heat it gently over the hearth, just until it is warm to the touch, about the temperature of a living body. Now for the magic. You reach for a small, dried, leathery-looking strip of material. It is a piece of a calf's fourth stomach, a byproduct from the last butchering, carefully cleaned and dried. This is rennet, and it is the key to all cheese making. It contains a complex of enzymes designed by nature to curdle milk, helping a young calf digest its mother's milk. You make cheese using fresh milk and a piece of a dead calf's stomach. It sounds like the start of a witch's potion, but the result is a delicious, squeaky snack. Don't question the magic. You drop a small piece of the rennet into the pot of warm milk, give it a gentle stir, and then you simply wait. You cover the pot and leave it in a warm spot by the hearth. And then, a quiet transformation begins. The enzymes from the rennet go to work on the milk proteins, specifically the casein. They cause the proteins to tangle together and solidify, separating from the liquid part of the milk. Within an hour or so, what was once a uniform liquid has become two distinct substances, a solid, trembling, almost gelatinous white mass of curds, and a thin, watery, greenish-yellow liquid called whey. This separation is the fundamental first step of all cheese making, a cornerstone of the medieval food economy. Dairy was a vital part of your world, and cheese was the primary method of preserving the immense nutritional value of milk long after it would have soured. The great monasteries were often centers of cheese-making innovation, their monk-led dairies perfecting the recipes for the hard, aged cheeses that could last for years and be traded as a valuable commodity. But your goal today is not to create a great wheel of cheese for the ages. Your goal is lunch. You take a long knife and slice the great, wobbly curd mass into a grid of cubes. This helps to release more of the whey. Then, with a slotted spoon or with your clean hands, You gently scoop the solid curds out of the pot, letting the whey drain away. The whey is not discarded. It is a nutritious drink in its own right, full of vitamins and protein, and can be drunk as is or used as the liquid for making bread or pottage. What you have left in your bowl is a pile of soft, white, irregular-shaped pieces of pure milk protein and fat. These are the cheese curds. You sprinkle them with a little salt, and they are ready to eat. You pick one up. It is soft, yet firm and springy to the touch. You pop it in your mouth and bite down, and then you hear it, a distinct, satisfying squeak. A good cheese curd should squeak when you eat it. It's the cheese's way of saying hello before it becomes your lunch. If it doesn't squeak, you can still eat it, but there's a certain lack of polite conversation. This squeaking sound is the hallmark of ultimate freshness, the sound of the tightly knit protein strands rubbing against the enamel of your teeth. The flavor is mild, milky, clean, and slightly tangy, with the simple taste of the salt you've added. It is a profoundly comforting food, a direct and unadorned expression of the milk from which it came. It is nourishing and incredibly satisfying, packed with the protein and fat you need to sustain your energy for the rest of the day's work. While animal rennet was the standard, a quirky and useful alternative was also known. Certain plants, such as the thistle, the common nettle, or a fragrant herb called lady's bedstraw, contain natural enzymes that can also curdle milk. This vegetable rennet was a valuable resource, particularly during the strictest Lenten fasts when some interpretations of church law forbade not just meat but all animal byproducts. It was also a lifeline for those who could not easily source or afford a piece of a calf's stomach. The portability of cheese curds is their greatest virtue. You can take a large handful, wrap them in a cool, damp cabbage leaf to keep them fresh, and tuck them into your satchel. Hours later, sitting on that windy hillside, they are the perfect meal. There is no need for a fire, no need for a spoon, no messy liquid to spill. It is a self-contained, nutrient-dense, and reliable snack. Your descendants will take these same curds, deep fry them, or melt them over fried potatoes and gravy and call it a national delicacy. You just call it Tuesday's pocket cheese, and it's just as delicious without the fancy name. Of course, the process was not without its risks. Historians and dairy scientists continue to debate the consistency and safety of medieval cheesemaking. Your world has no concept of pasteurization, sterilization, or germ theory. A stray bit of dirt, an unclean pot, or a batch of milk from a sick animal could introduce harmful bacteria. How did you control for this? It was a combination of speed, salt, and traditional, hard-won knowledge. By using the milk when it was still fresh and warm from the animal, you gave the rennet a head start against any competing microbes. Salt was a powerful preservative, and a clean dairy was a sign of a good household. But it was still a gamble. For every successful batch of curds, there were likely others that soured or spoiled, a frustrating loss of precious food. But when it works, the result is perfection. It is a food that is both simple and profound, a daily staple that connects you directly to the animals you care for and the land that sustains them. It is the taste of the fresh milk, the salt from the earth, and the quiet magic of ancient chemistry, all captured in a simple, squeaky, and surprisingly comforting bite. The simple, squeaky comfort of a fresh cheese curd is a reliable pleasure, a taste of the field, and a testament to the quiet magic of your dairy. It is a food of mild, predictable satisfaction. But your world is not always so predictable. Now, we must journey into the lean, hungry heart of late winter. The festive apples used for the fritters of the autumn fair are a distant, sweet memory. The fresh fruits of summer are an almost unimaginable dream. Your desire for a treat, for something sweet to cap a meager meal, has not faded, but your ingredients have. In the bottom of your storage pit, you have an abundance of one thing, the lumpy, steadfast, and profoundly unsweet turnip. And tonight, you are going to attempt an act of desperate culinary alchemy. You are going to bake a turnip pie. You've decided to make a dessert pie out of a turnip. This is either an act of culinary genius or a cry for help. The line is very thin. This is the poor man's dessert. A dish born from the marriage of a powerful sweet tooth and an almost empty larder. It is an earnest attempt to create a moment of joy from the most humble of materials. The result is a complete and utter gamble. The process begins with an attempt to subdue the very essence of the turnip itself. You select a few of the best-looking roots from your store, the ones that are firm and not too woody. You peel their tough, earthy skins and chop them into chunks. Then, you place them in your cauldron with water and set them to boil, and you boil them not just until they are tender, but with a kind of punitive fury. You are trying to boil the turnipness right out of them, to leach away the pungent, sulfurous, slightly bitter flavor that makes a turnip a turnip. You might even drain the water and boil them a second time, a desperate act of flavor exorcism. When the turnips are soft and almost falling apart, you drain them thoroughly and begin to mash them into a pulp. The texture is a bit stringy, a bit watery, but it is the canvas upon which you will attempt to paint your masterpiece of deception. Now comes the moment of transformation, where you add the ingredients that you pray will trick your palate into believing this is a dessert. First, and most importantly, is the sweetener. You reach for your precious pot of honey, a commodity you guard with your life, and you add a generous, almost reckless, amount to the turnip mash. You stir it in. The thick, golden sweetness, a stark contrast to the pale, lumpy pulp. Next, for richness and structure, you crack in an egg or two, if your chickens are laying. The eggs will help the filling set into a more custardy, less watery consistency. If you are a person of some small means, or if it is a particularly special occasion, you might now add a pinch of powdered magic, spice. A tiny dusting of ginger or nutmeg, bought at great expense from a traveling peddler, can do more to mask the flavor of the turnip than all the honey in the world. Its fragrant, exotic aroma is a powerful form of misdirection, a scented veil thrown over the humble reality of the root vegetable. And if you have any left, you might chop up a handful of dried apples or pears from last year's harvest and stir them in, adding pockets of genuine fruit flavor and a chewy texture to the mix. This hopeful, confusing concoction is then poured into a pastry crust. The crust, in the mainstream tradition of medieval pies, is a simple, sturdy affair made from coarse flour, lard, and water. In your time, the pastry case is often called a coffin, not for any morbid reason, but because it is a vessel that holds the filling. It is less a delicate, flaky pastry and more of a durable, edible container designed to withstand the heat of the hearth. You place the pie on a hot stone near the embers of your fire, or if it's baking day, you carry it to the great communal oven. As it bakes, The hut fills with a strange, perplexing aroma. It is sweet, yes, from the honey and spice, but underneath it all is the faint, unmistakable, earthy scent of boiling turnips. Finally, the pie is done. The crust is golden brown, and the filling has set. This is the moment of truth. Every bite of turnip pie is a suspenseful adventure. Will it be a sweet, custardy delight, or will it be a reminder that you're eating a sweetened root vegetable from the mud? Place your bets now. Sometimes, against all odds, the alchemy works. You take a bite, and it is surprisingly good. The long boiling has mellowed the turnip's strong character. The honey, the egg, and the spices have transformed the mash into a warm, sweet, custardy pudding. The dried fruit adds a pleasant chewiness. It doesn't taste like an apple pie, certainly, but it tastes like something. It is sweet, comforting, and deeply satisfying. It is a triumph, a small victory against the bleakness of the winter larder. But, perhaps more often, the turnip refuses to be tamed. You take a bite, and your palate is thrown into a state of profound confusion. The initial taste is sweet, but it is immediately followed by the distinct, unyielding, and slightly bitter aftertaste of turnip. The texture is a bit lumpy, a bit watery. It is not a harmonious blend of flavors. It is a culinary argument happening in your mouth. You eat it, of course. It is hot, it is filling, and it has precious honey in it. You will not waste it, but it is a culinary disappointment, a reminder that you cannot always fool nature. This practice of making one food impersonate another is a quirky but common feature of medieval cooking. Cooks of high status, in particular, love to create deceptive dishes known as subtleties or subtleties. For a Lenten feast, they might craft mock eggs from almond milk and ground almonds, or mold a fish pâté into the shape of a roasted boar's head. Your sweet turnip pie is a humbler, more desperate version of this same tradition, an attempt to make a lowly winter root impersonate a treasured summer fruit. Food historians still debate the origins of such recipes. Were these vegetable-based desserts a genuine peasant food? A dish truly born of necessity in the hungry cottages of the poor? Or were they more of a novelty, a culinary joke created by the cooks in wealthier manor houses, who had access to the huge quantities of expensive sweeteners and spices needed to make them palatable, and whose noble employers would have been amused by the clever trick? The truth is likely that they existed in both worlds, as a desperate measure for you, and as a whimsical novelty for them. Regardless of its origin, the turnip pie is a dish of profound character. It is cheap, it is filling, and it is deeply, deeply earnest. It's the culinary equivalent of a well-meaning but slightly awkward friend. You appreciate the effort, even if the result is a bit weird. It represents the refusal to give up on the idea of dessert, the defiant human need for a small pocket of sweetness, even when the only ingredient you have is the wrong one. It is the taste of hope, however lumpy and turnip-flavored that hope may be. The desperate gamble of the turnip pie, whether it ends in sweet victory or a lumpy, savory defeat, is a testament to the things you do for a rare treat. But now, we turn from the hopeful world of makeshift desserts to the deeply practical realm of the everyday meal. You need a food that is not a treat, but a tool. You need a portable, durable, and self-contained lunch that can survive a long day of hard labor in the fields, down a mine, or on the road. You need the ancestor of the Hot Pocket, the king of convenience food, the mighty meat pasty. This is not a delicate dish to be eaten with a fork. It is a rugged, utilitarian masterpiece of design. It begins, like the turnip pie, with a pastry crust, the coffin. But this crust is even tougher, made with a dense dough of coarse flour, water, and suet or lard. Its purpose is not to be light and flaky, but to be a robust, edible container, a fortress of flour that can be jostled in a satchel for hours and emerge intact. The thick crimped edge of the pasty is a built-in handle, which is very useful if your hands are covered in mud, grime, or whatever it is you've been working in all day. It's the original edible, disposable packaging. Inside this sturdy crust is the filling, and the filling is a story of season and opportunity. The filling of your pasty is whatever you could get your hands on. Sometimes it's beef, sometimes it's rabbit, and sometimes it's a small, spiky mammal that wasn't fast enough. The heavy seasoning ensures it all tastes vaguely like meat and pepper. The most common fillings are humble, diced mutton from an old ewe, chunks of beef, or pork, mixed with hearty, inexpensive vegetables like onion, leek, and, yes, the ever-present turnip. But the pasty is also a vessel for windfalls and adventure. If you have the right to hunt in the Lord's forest, or perhaps if you are skilled with a secret snare, the filling could be venison, rabbit, or squirrel. In leaner times, or for those living on the wilder edges of society, the definition of meat becomes wonderfully broad. Rook pies were common, using the tough, dark meat of the crow-like birds. And yes, in some parts of the country, if you were lucky enough to find one, a hedgehog might find its way into your pie. Its meat supposedly rich and flavorful once you've navigated the spiky exterior. Food historians and culinary archaeologists often debate the true contents of the average peasant's pasty. While the more exotic fillings like hedgehog or rook are certainly documented in historical records and recipes, were they a common reality for most people? Or were the vast majority of pasties filled with the simple, mundane, and predictable mixture of mutton and onion? It's possible that the more unusual recipes are a case of historical novelty seeking, the kind of strange tidbit that a medieval chronicler would find more interesting to write down than the boring truth of 1,000 identical mutton pies. Whatever the meat, one thing is certain. It is heavily seasoned. You use a heavy hand with the pungent, savory flavors you have available. Black pepper, if you can afford it, is used liberally. A huge amount of onion and garlic forms the base. Strong, resinous herbs foraged from the hedgerow, like thyme, sage, or rosemary, are chopped and mixed in. This intense seasoning serves two purposes. Firstly, it adds a powerful, delicious flavor. But secondly, and more importantly, it is a form of culinary disguise. The meat you are using might not be at the peak of freshness. The strong, assertive flavors of the pepper and herbs are brilliant at masking any slightly off or gamey tastes, and the antibacterial properties of some herbs were believed to help preserve the filling. Once the pasty is filled and the edges are crimped shut, it must be baked. You will likely take yours, along with the pasties of your neighbors, to the great communal oven. This presents a problem. In a pile of 24 identical-looking pasties, how do you know which one is yours? The solution is a wonderfully quirky and practical form of branding, the baker's mark. Before you send your pasty to the fire, you use a knife to carve your initial or a simple, unique symbol into the top of the crust. One family might use a cross, another a star, another the simple letter W for William. You carve your initial into your pasty before baking. It's a primitive but effective security system. It tells everyone at the village oven, "This is my hedgehog pie. Get your own." This tradition of the portable meat pie for laborers has endured for centuries, and its most famous descendant is a mainstream historical icon, the Cornish pasty. The specific recipe now protected by law: diced beef, potato, swede, a type of turnip, and onion, was solidified in the 18th and 19th centuries. But its soul was forged in your era. It was the perfect food for the tin miners of Cornwall, a complete, calorie-dense meal that could be easily carried deep underground and eaten in the dark, dirty tunnels. The miners even added their own piece of quirky folklore to the pasty tradition. There was a belief that the thick, tough crust handle, which they would hold with their arsenic-contaminated hands, should not be eaten. Instead, this leftover crust was to be dropped on the ground as an offering for the knockers, mischievous, gnome-like spirits who were believed to live in the mines. Leaving them this small tribute was thought to bring good luck, reveal rich veins of tin, and ward off the deadly accidents that were a constant threat. For you, today, there are no mine shaft goblins to appease. There is only the deep, satisfying pleasure of your lunch. You find a spot to rest from your work, and you pull the warm, heavy pasty from your bag. You hold it in your hands, no plate or fork required. You bite through the thick, savory crust. The inside is a steaming, juicy, intensely flavored mixture of meat and vegetables. It is a hot, hearty, and deeply comforting meal in a convenient, edible package. It is the perfect fuel, a taste of home that you can carry with you, a small but significant piece of medieval ingenuity. The savory, steaming meat pasty has fortified you for the day's labor, its rich, peppery aroma a satisfying memory. But that deliciousness comes with a lingering cost. The potent flavors of onion, garlic, and heavily seasoned meat, combined with the general lack of modern dental hygiene, can leave your breath less than fresh. In a world of close quarters, this is a social reality. But what if you are a person of status? What if you are about to have a private conversation with a noble lord or lady? You need a solution. You need the medieval equivalent of a breath mint, a tiny, potent, and surprisingly perilous treat, the candied fennel seed. This is not a snack for the common person. We have now left the world of the peasant's pouch and entered the perfumed, rarefied air of the manor house. This small sweet, known as a comfit, is a symbol of wealth and sophistication, primarily because its main ingredient, sugar, is one of the most expensive commodities in the world. But it is more than just a sweet. It is also a medicine, a digestive aid, and a social necessity. Your understanding of health is governed by the ancient theory of the four humors, where every food has a quality of hot, cold, wet, or dry. After a heavy meal, your stomach is believed to be cool and sluggish. Fennel, with its warm, aromatic, licorice-like flavor, was considered a hot and dry substance. Therefore, chewing on a fennel seed was thought to warm the stomach, aid digestion, prevent the buildup of gas or wind, and generally restore balance to the body. So, when you are offered a candied fennel seed, you are partaking in a form of post-meal preventative medicine. The creation of these comfits is a laborious and highly skilled art, often performed by an apothecary or a specialized confectioner. It is a process that requires patience, strength, and a huge amount of precious sugar. Making these involves shaking a pan of seeds and sugar for about 3 days straight. It's the world's most boring and delicious upper body workout. The process begins with whole, dried fennel seeds. These are placed in a large, shallow, rounded pan, often made of copper, which is suspended over a gentle charcoal brazier. The confectioner then creates a simple syrup of sugar and water. A small ladleful of this hot, clear syrup is poured over the seeds in the pan. Immediately, the confectioner begins to shake, toss, and swirl the pan in a constant, rhythmic motion. The seeds roll over one another, and as the water evaporates, a microscopically thin layer of sugar crystallizes onto each seed. Then, the process is repeated. Another ladle of syrup, followed by minutes of relentless shaking and tossing until it dries. And again, for hours, sometimes for days, this process continues. With each new layer, the sugar shell around each individual fennel seed grows thicker, harder, and smoother. A master confectioner could create a comfit of perfect roundness and a flawlessly smooth, polished surface. It is a testament to incredible patience and skill. To make the comfits even more beautiful and impressive, the confectioner might add a touch of color to the syrup. This quirky and artistic flourish was another way to display wealth. A pinch of eye-wateringly expensive saffron would turn the comfits a brilliant yellow. Ground sandalwood or cochineal could create a deep red. Juice from parsley or spinach might be used for green. A bowl of these multicolored jewels, shimmering in the candlelight of a great hall, was the very picture of luxury. At the end of a great feast, after the main courses have been cleared, a servant might approach you with a silver dish. This part of the meal is called the voide, a ceremonial moment where guests are offered spices and sweets to cleanse the palate and aid digestion before they depart. On the dish are these small, pebble-like creations. Being offered a candied fennel seed at a feast is a high honor. It's the medieval equivalent of your host letting you use their private Wi-Fi. It means you're important. You take one. It is surprisingly heavy and as hard as a stone. You place it in your mouth. At first, you taste only the pure, clean sweetness of the sugar shell. You let it dissolve slowly, a rare and indulgent pleasure. As the sugar melts away, you reach the seed at its core. You bite down, and there is a loud, sharp crack. This crunch, far from being rude, was often considered good manners, a way of showing your host that you were enjoying their expensive offering. The crack releases the intensely aromatic, anise-like, and slightly bitter flavor of the fennel, a burst of fresh, palate-cleansing spice that banishes any lingering taste of the meal. But this satisfying crack comes with a very real danger. These comfits are notoriously tooth-shatteringly hard. The dense, layered sugar shell is a formidable opponent for even the strongest molars. This is your breath mint. It's also your dentist's retirement plan. It freshens your breath by giving you an exciting new problem to think about, like a shattered molar. Dental care in your time is brutal and rudimentary, so a cracked tooth is a serious and painful affair. Every candied seed is a small gamble. This entire category of sweets raises a question that historians still debate. Where was the line between confectionery and medicine in the medieval period? Were these candied seeds, which were also sold in apothecary shops, genuinely considered a medical treatment for digestive ailments, with their sweetness being a pleasant side effect? Or was the medical justification simply a convenient, high-minded excuse for the wealthy to indulge their craving for the rare, high-status, and deeply pleasurable taste of pure sugar? It is likely that the two concepts were completely intertwined. To you, something that tasted this good, felt this luxurious, and was this expensive must surely have some beneficial properties. So you savor the last of the sweet, licorice-like flavor in your mouth. Your palate is refreshed, your stomach feels settled, and hopefully, your teeth are all still intact. It is a small, perfect, and perilous end to a grand meal, a tiny, jewel-like window into the world of aristocratic taste, medicine, and luxury. The delicate, tooth-cracking fennel comfit, with its ghost of licorice and shell of precious sugar, is a memory of the high table, a whisper of aristocratic life. But now we leave that world of refined, perilous sweets behind. We descend from the manor house back into the boisterous, communal world of the village feast. It might be a wedding, a harvest festival, or a holy day. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and wood smoke, and laid out on the trestle tables is a dessert that is not light, crisp, or delicate. It is a dense, sticky, and profoundly substantial treat. A celebratory confection so famously tough it could double as a doorstop. It is the mighty honey cake. This is the sweet of the people. While sugar is a rare and exotic dust reserved for the wealthy, honey is the lifeblood of your world's sweetness. The craft of beekeeping, or apiculture, is a vital and respected part of your village economy. The honey from your hives sweetens your food, and it is the base for the intoxicating drink of mead. The beeswax is used to make the purest and most valuable candles, many of which will be given to the church as a pious offering. Honey is your liquid gold, and the honey cake is its most festive expression. You watch as the cake is prepared, not with the delicate precision of a confectioner, but with the robust confidence of a village baker. The process begins with a large bowl of coarse, wholemeal flour, likely rye or a blend of rye and wheat. To this is added the star of the show, a huge quantity of honey. The honey of your time is not the pale, uniform, clear liquid of the future. It is a dark, opaque, and powerfully fragrant substance, unfiltered and full of the character of the wildflowers or heather the bees have visited. It is warmed gently by the hearth to make it pourable, and a thick, fragrant, amber river is streamed into the flour. Eggs are cracked into the mixture for richness, and perhaps a glug of ale for moisture. If the occasion is truly grand, spices might be added. Powdered ginger was a particular favorite to pair with honey, its fiery warmth a perfect complement to the deep sweetness. A handful of chopped dried fruits or foraged nuts might also be stirred in, turning the cake into a truly luxurious item. The baker kneads this mixture not into a light, airy dough, but into a stiff, incredibly sticky, and heavy mass. There is little to no leavening used. There is no baking soda or powder. The goal is not to create a light, fluffy sponge, but a dense, substantial cake designed for longevity and satisfaction. For a truly special event, This is where a touch of artistry comes in. A quirky and wonderful feature of festive baking was the use of intricately carved wooden molds. Instead of a simple round, the sticky dough could be pressed into a large, shallow wooden mold that has been carved with a beautiful design. The image of a saint, the coat of arms of the local lord, a mythical beast like a dragon, or a symbol of the harvest. The cake becomes an edible sculpture, a centerpiece for the feast. The cake is then baked, often in the residual heat of the great communal oven after the bread is done, or on a greased flat stone placed in the hot embers of a hearth. It bakes slowly, the honey caramelizing and the outside forming a dark, hard crust. The finished product is then brought to the feast table. It is a heavy, formidable-looking object. Your honey cake is a multi-purpose tool. It's a dessert, a paperweight, and, in an emergency, a highly effective blunt instrument. Truly the Swiss Army knife of baked goods. A knife is used to cut the cake, and it requires significant effort. The slices are not light and airy, but dense, dark, and chewy. You are given a piece. You take a bite. Eating this honey cake is a serious commitment. It's a workout for your jaw. People left the feast with a full stomach and a sore face. The texture is intensely chewy, almost tough, and it sticks to your teeth. The flavor is overwhelming. The deep, complex, floral sweetness of the honey is the first thing you taste, followed by the earthy, nutty flavor of the wholemeal flour and the warm kick of the ginger. It is not a subtle dessert, but it is deeply, profoundly satisfying. Its incredible density and the preservative qualities of the honey mean that this cake has an astonishingly long shelf life. This cake has a shelf life of approximately forever. 100 years from now, archaeologists will dig it up and it will still be vaguely edible, and still just as hard. A cake baked for a wedding could be set aside and pieces eaten for weeks, or even months. Later, a lingering taste of the happy celebration. This very density has led to a great deal of scholarly debate. Historians who study medieval texts are often confronted with the word cake. But did this word always mean a baked, bread-like item as we would understand it? Or was the term used more broadly to describe any kind of sweetened, flour-based confection? Some recipes for cake seem to describe something more akin to a fried pastry, a hard biscuit, or even a thickened, sweetened pudding that was boiled rather than baked. The lines between these categories were much blurrier in your world, but this particular creation is undeniably a cake, and it is the perfect food for a feast. It is rich, it is sweet, and a small piece is incredibly filling. It is a symbol of abundance and celebration, a rare and welcome departure from the savory subsistence of everyday life. It is the taste of a wedding, of a harvest brought safely home, of a community gathered in joy. And if, at the end of the night, you need something to prop the door open, it will serve that purpose admirably as well. The dense, honey-sweetened cake from the village feast was a taste of celebration, a heavy, happy anchor in your memory. It was a food of the land, of the harvest and the hive. But now, we leave the cheerful festival behind and venture into a different world. A world of grit, salt, and practicality. We head towards the bustling, noisy docks of a port town, or into the smoky, low-beamed interior of a soldier's tavern. Here, you will find a snack that is not sweet, not celebratory, and certainly not for the faint of heart. You will overcome its pungent aroma to discover the deep, savory pleasure of fried fish skins. This is a snack born from the absolute refusal to waste anything. We've seen this philosophy with the offal of the pig and the blood pudding. The same ironclad rule applies to the bounty of the sea. Fish, particularly cod, is a cornerstone of the medieval economy. The great cod fisheries of the North Sea and the Atlantic are a mainstream historical engine feeding much of Europe. Great fleets of ships pursue these fish, and the catch is brought ashore to be salted, dried, and smoked, creating a preserved protein source that can be traded far inland. But after the thick, white fillets of the cod have been cut away, a great slimy, scaly pile of skins, heads, and bones remains. To a medieval mind, this is not waste. It is an opportunity. You find yourself in a dockside tavern, the air thick with the smell of stale ale, sweat, and wood smoke. From a back room comes another, more potent aroma. The smell of frying fish skins is a powerful force. It's a smell that makes you question your life choices right up until the moment you taste one, at which point you forget the smell and just want more. The cook is tending a bubbling pot of hot fat, perhaps lard, but more likely rendered fish oil, a cheaper and more readily available alternative in a port town. The process is simple and direct. The fish skins, having been scaled and scraped clean of any residual flesh, are dropped into the seething oil. They curl and twist violently, sputtering and popping as the last of their moisture turns to steam. They puff up, their texture transforming from a slimy, rubbery membrane into something light, airy, and incredibly crisp. After a few moments, they are scooped out, a tangled, golden brown nest of crunchy curls, and dusted liberally with coarse salt. A wooden bowl of these cracklings is placed on the rough-hewn table in front of you, alongside a foaming mug of ale. This is not a first-date food. This is a we've been married for 20 years and have no secrets left food. Or you're a soldier on a 50-mile march and you'll eat anything that's not moving food. You pick one up. It is feather-light and brittle, shattering between your fingers. You take a bite. The texture is an explosion of crunch, a deeply satisfying, loud, and brittle crispness. Then the flavor hits you, an intense wave of salt, followed by a deep, savory, and unmistakably fishy taste, rich with the natural oils of the cod. It is an incredibly Moorish flavor. The intense saltiness makes you thirsty, which in turn makes you drink more of your ale. The tavern owner knows exactly what he's doing. He gives you a bowl of these salty, crunchy fish skins for free. After eating them, you're so thirsty you'll buy 3 more mugs of ale. It's the oldest and most effective business model in the world. This is the perfect snack for sailors and soldiers. It is high in fat and protein, providing a much-needed burst of energy for a life of hard physical labor. The salt helps to replenish what is lost through sweat. And because they are essentially dehydrated, they are light and keep reasonably well, making them an ideal ration to be carried in a pouch on a long sea voyage or a grueling march. While the skin is fried for a crunchy snack, other strange byproducts of the fish have their own quirky uses. A substance called isinglass, for instance, is a pure, high-quality gelatin harvested from the swim bladders of fish, particularly large sturgeon. This gelatin is not for eating. It is a vital ingredient for brewers and vintners. A small amount of dissolved isinglass, when added to a barrel of cloudy ale or wine, acts as a fining agent. It attracts the free-floating yeast particles and other impurities, binding them together and causing them to sink to the bottom of the barrel, resulting in a much clearer and more appealing final drink. It is another piece of the puzzle, a strange, gelatinous byproduct that helps clarify the very ale you are drinking with your fish cracklings. Of course, the nutritional value of a diet heavy in such items is a matter of some debate for future historians. Maritime scholars and food scientists will one day argue about the role these snacks played in the health of sailors. Did the fried skins and other fish byproducts contain enough of the specific vitamins and minerals, like vitamin D or omega-3 fatty acids, to provide a genuine health benefit and perhaps stave off deficiencies? Or were they simply a source of empty calories and salt, a way to make a hard life more palatable, but a diet that ultimately contributed to the poor health of the men who relied on it? For you, sitting in this noisy tavern, such questions are irrelevant. What you know is that this bowl of crunchy, salty, fishy crisps is delicious. It is a humble food, born of poverty and practicality, yet it delivers a powerful punch of flavor and satisfaction. It is the taste of the working man, of the sea, of the barracks, of a world that understands that there is value and pleasure to be found in the parts that others might throw away. The salty, crunchy memory of the fried fish skins fades as you leave the smoky tavern behind. That was a snack of the public house, a food of convenience and commerce. But now, we return to the quiet and humble reality of your own home. It is the end of a long week. The loaf of dark bread you baked 7 days ago, which was once a source of wholesome pride, has now become your adversary. By the end of the week, your loaf of bread has the structural integrity of a paving stone. You don't slice it, you quarry it. It's less a food item and more a building material you happen to be able to eat. Your teeth, worn down by a lifetime of gritty, coarse food, cannot handle this challenge. To try and chew a hunk of this bread would be to risk a cracked tooth, a painful and dangerous affliction in a world without dentists. But to throw the bread away is an unthinkable sin. It represents days of your labor in the field, a portion of your precious grain harvest. It must be eaten. The solution to this problem is a dish of profound simplicity and peasant ingenuity, a warm, soft, and comforting meal known as soups. The recipe, if one can call it that, is a perfect expression of the philosophy of using everything and wasting nothing. It takes 2 items that are past their prime and combines them to create something new and nourishing. The first ingredient is your rock-hard, stale bread. The second is the dregs from your barrel of household ale. This is not the fresh, lively ale you would offer to a guest. This is the flat, slightly sour, and cloudy liquid from the bottom of the barrel. It has lost its festive fizz, but it has not lost its value. It is still a source of calories and nutrients from the grain it was brewed with, and as we know, it is far safer to consume than plain water. The process is the very definition of simplicity. You take a hammer or the back of a heavy knife and break off a chunk of the impossibly hard bread. You place it in your personal wooden or earthenware bowl. Then, you ladle some of the flat ale from its jug into a small pot and warm it gently over the embers of your hearth. You pour the warm, steaming ale over the bread in the bowl. For a slightly more refined version, a quirky but common technique is to first toast the bread. You might impale the slice of stale bread on a forked stick or place it in a simple green wood stand and prop it up next to the fire. The intense, Dry heat of the embers drives out the very last of the moisture, making the bread brittle and porous, and imparting a wonderful, smoky flavor. When you pour the warm ale over this toasted bread, it soaks up the liquid even more readily, like a sponge. You watch as the transformation takes place. The hard, unyielding bread begins to soften, its rigid structure collapsing as it absorbs the warm liquid. After a minute or two, you take your spoon and stir, breaking up the last of the solid pieces until you are left with a thick, warm, mushy porridge. This is Sops. It's a simple name for a simple dish. It's not trying to be anything. It's not. It's not artisanal ale braised heritage grain porridge. It's mushy bread. And it's dinner. You take a spoonful. The texture is soft, pulpy, and requires no chewing. A blessed relief for tired jaws and aching teeth. The flavor is a complex and deeply familiar one. It is the nutty, slightly sour taste of your rye or barley bread, combined with the yeasty, bready, and tangy flavor of the ale. It is not a dish of bright, exciting flavors, but it is deeply savory, filling, and coats your stomach with a comforting warmth. This dish, a mush of old bread and flat beer, probably won't be featured in any fancy cookbooks. But on a cold night, when you're tired and your teeth hurt, it's the most beautiful food in the world. It's the culinary equivalent of a warm hug. This humble dish is so fundamental to your diet that it has given its name to some of the most common words in your descendants' vocabulary. This is a mainstream historical and etymological fact. The word sop or soup originally meant the piece of bread itself that was used for soaking. The soup was the liquid, the broth, gravy, or in this case, ale, that the bread was dipped into. Over time, the name of the bread became the name of the liquid. The word supper, your name for the evening meal, also comes from this same root. Supper was originally a light evening meal, often consisting of nothing more than these sops. The very language of food is built upon the foundation of this simple, mushy bowl. Of course, the exact nature of this dish varied depending on what was available. Historians and linguists continue to debate the primary liquid that was used for sops in the poorest households. While ale, with its added calories and safety, was a common choice, was it always available in sufficient quantities to be used so freely? Or was this a slightly more prosperous peasant's version of the dish? In leaner times, or in a household that had run out of ale, the liquid might be the thin, watery broth from the pottage pot, or, in the most desperate of circumstances, simply hot water with a pinch of precious salt for flavor. But for you, tonight, it is ale. This bowl of soups is a perfect, closed-loop system of your household economy. The grain from your field was harvested to make flour for your bread and to be malted for your ale. The bread and ale sustained you through the week. And now, at the end of their lives, the stale bread and the flat ale have come together to create one final, nourishing meal. Nothing is lost. It is a quiet, steaming bowl of ingenuity, a testament to a world that could not afford the luxury of waste. It is the simple, sensible, and deeply comforting taste of survival. The warm, mushy bowl of ale-soaked bread is a dish of profound humility. It is the taste of peasant practicality, a clever trick to salvage the unsalvageable. This simple concept, a piece of bread used as a sponge for liquid, is a bedrock of your culinary world. But now, we must leave the quiet, smoky hut and travel upwards, climbing the great social ladder. We are headed to the great hall of a castle or manor house, where this same humble principle has been transformed by wealth, status, and a torrent of expensive spices into a strange, luxurious, and often confusing dessert. Sops and wine. You are now seated at the high table at the end of a magnificent feast. The air, which in your own home smells of earth and damp straw, here smells of beeswax candles, roasting meat, and the heady, exotic perfume of spices from the far side of the world. The main courses, peacocks were dressed in their feathers, great pies filled with savory meats, and glistening sides of venison, have been cleared away. A servant approaches with a fine pewter or even silver bowl and places it before you with a spoon. Inside is the noble's answer to the peasant's soups. At a glance, the ingredients seem related, but they are worlds apart. The bread is not the coarse, dark, week-old loaf of a farmer. It is manchet, the finest bread available, made from pure, sifted white wheat flour, a symbol of purity and status. The crusts have been neatly trimmed away, and the soft, white crumb has been sliced into neat cubes or fingers, perhaps lightly toasted by the fire or even fried in butter to give it a golden color and a firmer texture that will better withstand its impending bath. Eating stale bread soaked in ale makes you a peasant. Eating fancy white bread soaked in spiced wine makes you a nobleman. It's all about the quality of your mush. The liquid is not the flat, sour dregs from the bottom of an ale barrel. It is wine, the lifeblood of aristocratic dining. And it is not plain wine. It is a hot, sweet, and powerfully aromatic concoction known as mulled wine, or, in its most luxurious form, hippocras. This is a mainstream historical beverage of the European upper classes, a drink that was both a pleasure and a medicine. To make it, the Lord's cook has gently heated a good quality red wine and infused it with a staggering amount of precious spices. A small muslin bag, a bouquet garni, containing sticks of true cinnamon, whole cloves, slices of fiery ginger, and perhaps a few scraped shards of nutmeg, has been steeped in the wine until its very soul has infused the liquid. To this spiced infusion, a generous amount of honey, or, for a truly ostentatious display of wealth, expensive sugar has been added, creating a drink that is at once warming, spicy, and deeply sweet. The resulting liquid might be a deep, ruby red, or it could be a brilliant gold if saffron, a spice worth more than its weight in gold, has been used to color it. The servant now pours this hot, fragrant, jewel-toned liquid over the neat cubes of manchet bread in your bowl. The dish is served to you immediately. This is sops and wine. Sops and wine is what happens when your dessert and your after-dinner drink have a baby. It's a confusing baby, and you're not sure how to hold it, but it's warm and full of booze, so you don't complain. You pick up your spoon. The aroma that rises is incredible. The fruity notes of the wine, the warmth of the cinnamon and clove, the sweetness of the honey. You take a bite. The flavor is intense, a wave of sweet, spicy, alcoholic warmth that floods your senses. The bread has acted as a perfect sponge, soaking up the potent liquid. But the texture is where the chaos begins. The texture of this dish can range from delightfully spongy to tragic bread soup. It's a fine line between a luxurious dessert and what you feed the ducks, but with more cinnamon. If the bread was properly toasted or fried, and if the dish is served immediately, the sops might retain some of their structural integrity. They are soft and saturated on the outside, but still have a slight chewiness in the center. It is a pleasant, if unusual, warm pudding. But if the bread was too soft, or if the dish was left to sit for even a few moments too long, the bread collapses entirely, disintegrating into a soupy, pulpy mush. It is still delicious, but its texture is, to a modern palate, deeply perplexing. Is it a drink you eat, or a food you drink? Food historians still debate this very issue. When they attempt to recreate these recipes, the result is often a soggy mess. But did medieval cooks possess quirky tricks or techniques that have been lost to time? Did they, for instance, use a type of twice-baked bread, similar to a modern biscotti, that was specifically designed to withstand a long soaking? Or was the fried bread method more common than the recipes suggest? It is a scholarly debate about the true nature of historical sogginess. This dish was considered a perfect end to a meal, in keeping with the principles of humoral medicine. The hot spices in the wine were believed to aid digestion and warm the stomach, settling the humors after a large and fatty meal. It was a comforting, indulgent, and medically approved nightcap. The preparation of this dish could be a ritual in itself. In a particularly wealthy household, a quirky and impressive item called a NEF might be present on the high table. This was an elaborate, ship-shaped container, often made of silver or gold, which held the Lord's personal salt cellar, his knife, and the very spoon he would use for his sops in wine, a sign of his supreme status. For you, the guest, it is a final, warm, and boozy flourish to a magnificent meal. You spoon the last of the spicy, wine-soaked bread from your bowl. It is a dish that perfectly encapsulates the tastes of the medieval nobility, their love of intense spice, their ostentatious use of sugar and wine, and their occasional tolerance for textures that might seem utterly strange to their descendants. It is a comforting, confusing, and profoundly indulgent taste of the high life. The sweet, wine-soaked bread of the noble's table is a taste of luxury, a soft and gentle end to a lavish meal. But our journey must now take its final turn. We must leave the warmth and spice of the great hall, travel back down the social ladder, and return to the most fundamental and visceral reality of medieval life. We are present on the day of the autumn slaughter, and we are here to witness the ultimate expression of the philosophy that nothing, absolutely nothing, goes to waste. We are here for the blood. Today's snack is brought to you by the circulatory system. It's packed with iron and has a lovely dark color. It's not for the squeamish, but it's incredibly nutritious. As the pig is butchered, its lifeblood is not washed away into the dirt. It is carefully collected in a large bucket, a precious, nutrient-rich harvest. It is the most perishable part of the animal, and it must be used immediately. From this dark, crimson liquid, you will create a snack that is dense, savory, and packed with the iron and protein needed to survive a harsh winter. Blood pudding. This is one of the most ancient foods in the world, a mainstream historical staple found in nearly every culture that raises livestock. Homer's Odyssey speaks of men fighting over a sizzling sausage of blood and fat. Your version, known as black pudding, is a direct descendant of this ancient tradition. You take the bucket of fresh blood and stir it continuously to keep it from coagulating. To this, you add your fillers. These are essential, both to stretch this precious resource and to give it substance. You stir in handfuls of coarse oatmeal or barley, which will absorb the liquid and provide a satisfying, slightly grainy texture. Next comes the fat. You chop up chunks of pure white suet, the hard, crumbly fat from around the animal's kidneys, and add it to the dark mixture. This will provide richness, moisture, and a huge number of calories. Finally, you add your seasonings, chopped onions for their savory bite, coarse salt, a generous amount of black pepper, and perhaps other warming spices like allspice or mace if you can afford them. Some recipes also call for a quirky and now forgotten ingredient, the bitter, aromatic herb tansy. This was once a common culinary herb, but its use faded as it was later found to be mildly toxic in large doses. In your time, it was added not just for its sharp, medicinal flavor, but because it was believed to act as a natural preservative and a vermifuge, a dewormer, making your pudding a healthy, medicinal dish. This thick, dark, and fragrant slurry is now ready. You might stuff it into cleaned intestines to make long sausages, to be boiled and then stored for later. Or, for a more immediate snack, you can shape the mixture by hand into small, dense balls. These are gently boiled until they are firm and cooked through. They can be eaten just like this, but they are infinitely better when they are allowed to cool, then sliced or kept whole and fried in a pan of hot lard. You watch as the dark balls sizzle in the fat, their outsides turning a deep, almost black color, and developing a wonderfully crisp, caramelized crust. You spear one with the point of your knife. The outside is crispy and savory from the fat, and when you bite through, the inside is soft, dense, and moist, with the slightly chewy texture of the oats. The flavor is intensely rich and complex. It is savory, earthy, and deeply irony from the blood, with the sweetness of the onion and the warm hum of the spices cutting through the richness. It is a powerhouse of nutrition, a single ball containing enough iron, protein, and fat to ward off the weakness and anemia that can plague a winter diet. There is an even simpler, more utilitarian way to consume the blood pancake. The blood pancake is a food of brutal honesty. It doesn't hide what it is. It's not pretending to be anything other than a greasy, iron-flavored disk of sustenance. You don't eat it for the joy. You eat it for the fortitude. For this, the recipe is even more basic. You simply mix the fresh blood with enough rye or barley flour to create a thin, dark, reddish-black batter. A ladleful is poured onto a hot, greased griddle stone. It cooks in moments, a thin, floppy, and greasy pancake. The flavor is much more direct. It is the taste of blood, irony, and slightly metallic, like a very, very well done steak. It is eaten by all classes, a quick and efficient way to turn the most perishable part of the animal into a hot, solid meal with minimal fuss or expectation. In your world, there's no such thing as too much information when it comes to your food. You know exactly which pig this came from, and you probably helped name it. It makes the meal very personal. Historians and anthropologists continue to debate the social perception of blood as a food. Was it seen by you and your neighbors as a purely practical, nutritious byproduct, a simple ingredient like any other? Or did consuming the blood, the very life force of the animal, carry a deeper, more ritualistic, or even taboo significance. A powerful act that connected you more deeply to the cycles of life and death that govern your world. For you, these questions are academic. What you know is that nothing can be wasted. The blood pudding balls and the simple pancakes are the final, logical conclusion of a life lived in close proximity to your food. They are a taste of the deep, savory, and sometimes challenging reality of your diet. A final, iron-rich snack to fortify you against the cold. And with that last, profoundly earthy taste, our journey through the world of medieval snacks and sweets comes to a close. The boisterous noise of the tavern, the festive warmth of the wedding feast, and the quiet practicality of the peasant's hearth can now begin to fade. Let the strange and wonderful flavors, the sweet apple and hot fat, the squeak of fresh cheese, the confusing taste of turnip pie, the satisfying crunch of fish skin, and the iron-rich blood pudding all dissolve into the quiet, familiar comfort of your own peaceful room. There are no more tough honey cakes to chew, no more perilous fennel seeds to crack. The endless, pressing need to turn every last scrap into sustenance can be released, its weight lifting from your shoulders. You can let go of this world of delicious hardship and allow your mind to settle into the gentle softness of the present moment. The story is over, and now there is only the quiet rhythm of your own breathing, a soft and steady current carrying you away from the distant past and towards a night of deep, untroubled, and truly sweet dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.